we've been discussing this idea of the platform economy and its interrelationship with the circular economy. We have some experts, yes? For
Yes.
this second section.
Yes.
So I'd love to have an opportunity to hear from them. We cover a couple of different sectors, so we get an opportunity to see what is similar and what is different by sector. We've got an expert in the food waste reduction area, which is Katrina Saj. Is that how you pronounce the last name? And then in steel and mining, we have Organ Nostrom. And then lubricants, we have Mattia and Adani. And then in textiles, we have Andrea Werner. So a great number of experts available. So what I'd love to do now is to give each one of them an opportunity to say some framing remarks. And so why don't we go with the agenda here and start with Katrina, please.
Katrina, if you're online, please.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, hello.
Can you hear?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear and see you.
Hello, everyone, and greetings from Serbia. So I can share, I have a very short presentation, but that can guide a little bit me. I'll share it.
Before you start, do you want to give us just a brief introduction of yourself? And
Yes, sure. I'm working as I'm a portfolio manager within UNDP country office in Serbia. I have background in environment, circular economy, biodiversity, now working more with the private sector on various projects, but that are focused on achieving sustainable development goals. Of course, I always strive to have projects in the environment, as this is my passion. So I wouldn't say that I'm really expert in food waste or food in general, but yes, we worked in food waste in our circular economy project that started in 2018 and 19. And within this, we started development of this platform. Actually, it is not about food waste, it's about food surplus. Why I'm saying is that it's because the platform itself and this initiative actually is helping that food doesn't become waste. It is used as surplus for human consumption. I hope that you can see the presentation, and I'll start.
Yes, please, if you could.
yeah, perfect.
Okay, so I mean, what was the problem? Of course, you all know, but let me just point a few things. It's food waste, and food becoming waste is social and ethical problem. A lot of food is being wasted in Serbia, really a lot per year. But at the same time, there are a lot of citizens, 7% that are in absolute poverty, 24% that are at the risk in falling into this group. And of course, we have environmental issue with food waste because it contributes to global greenhouse gas emission. So what was the solution that we worked on together with food retailer, and that is a private company, the largest food retailer in Serbia, it's Delez Serbia, and Food Bank, it's an organization, a CSO. We created an online platform for donation of fruits and vegetables in line with the current legislation in Serbia and all food safety measures. The aim was to enhance the existing analog food donation program that existed already, and that was, connected retailer, food bank, humanitarian organizations, and then end users. It was a kind of a process that there was a lot of communication. Some food would be lost in that communication, of course, and it was time consuming. What we developed together with all these actors, and I have to mention also these humanitarian organizations as well, was an application, a platform based on blockchain technology in order to contribute to security and traceability of the entire process and to create a user-friendly solution. The technology itself, also it's important to mention is that we were looking for an adequate blockchain platform to use. So the choice was done by our engineers was to use this Stellar blockchain protocol. I don't know much about it. I'm not a tech engineer, but they argued that it was lightweight, open source, and not energy intensive, which was really important, as we don't want to, again, to have high energy intensivity while saving food from becoming waste. And the whole platform was developed by our own UNDP tech cell. We have internal team of software developers, so the solution was not so expensive. And they already had some experience with development of blockchain platforms, and they continue to develop those. If you have some questions, or should I just continue?
Please, yeah,
Okay.
continue, and then we can have questions.
Okay, so once it was developed, it took some time. It took a lot of conversations to be user friendly, so that users are not frightened of using this kind of technology. At the moment, it is used, so it is in production in 107 shops across Serbia by 64 humanitarian organizations. For around 6,000 people in need are getting fruits and vegetables for their consumption, and around almost 600 tons of fruits and vegetables were donated last year. Previously, they wouldn't reach more than 500 tons, and it is increasing year by year. I don't have exact numbers from the year before, but it is increasing, they told me. What are the impacts of such a solution? It solves the issue with coordination. A lot of people, a lot of time, and a lot of coordination. Amounts of donated food they increase, and there is thus reduction of food waste. Traceability of food, because it is on blockchain, the food can be traced back. And that is really important for food safety issues and the whole story of food coming to end users. And then there is scalability potential. It is designed in a way to be scalable and adaptable, so that other retailers can join and other companies as well, like suppliers, but it can also be used in other countries. And we had inquiries from many colleagues within UNDP offices, but also some colleagues within the LES network, the LES companies in other countries. That would be it.
That's great. No, thank you so much. Do you know why they chose to use blockchain technology? Was it necessary to use blockchain?
In fact, it could be without blockchain. It's an application like any, yeah. But blockchain, what it contributes is this the traceability and credibility part. So if something, God forbid, happens, but then you can trace back what was wrong with this kind of fruit or vegetable. And that was the point why to use blockchain. We also wanted to test this solution, to test blockchain for this kind of work. And as we are now developing, we have another project also working with the LES, but with EU funds to create another blockchain platform that is, tracing food from farm to fork. So doing other part of the chain. And
Gotcha.
This is helping us, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. That was super interesting.
You're welcome.
So, shall we move to the next topic? And we're going to come back to you with questions. But
Okay,
Lauren,
sure.
You want to speak and tell us a little bit about yourself and the comments you have for the steel and mining sector?
Yes, thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. Göran Nyström. I have been my career through Sandvik for many years and then Ovako as the executive vice president. Now I'm in a role of senior advisor working with technology development and especially in the sustainability area. So Ovako, we are headquartered in Sweden, a member of Nippon Steel Group. and we dare to say, a leader in the world of steel producers in sustainability. We have a world-leading low carbon footprint, the highest recycled content. We are the largest recycler of Nordic scrap, all categories. We are 94% of residual products are reused or recycled. We are in fact 100% carbon neutral from 1st of January last year. First in the world, still the only one among steel producers. And we are able to provide cradle to gate product data for all our products on carbon footprint. So all what we heard before lunch is really relevant to us and important. We are also the world first to use hydrogen and oxygen for heating of steel. This is to displace the use of fossil fuels. Today in the world, about 300 million tons of carbon dioxide is emitted because of this process. When you heat steel to 1200 degrees, everybody's using fossil fuels. And it's not applicable only to steel, it could be other types of industrial heat. This was an invention that was made possible through collaboration. So we had some names here, Ovako, Volvo, Hitachi, H2 Green Steel, Nel, and the Swedish Energy Agency and so on. The concept is very interesting because we will use all products what is produced from an electrolyzer, hydrogen, the oxygen, and the heat. And we will have complete electricity flexibility thanks to the existing propane system in the background. So this becomes really energy efficient, it becomes CO2 removal efficient, calendar time efficient, and there is no middleman involved. There's no storage, there's no transport, and it's directly applicable without building infrastructure to many locations across Europe. So what this gives us is an opportunity for industrial synergy, so-called hydrogen valleys, the power grid balancing, the fuel cell trucks. And on top of an existing system, we can actually add, at no extra manning, additional capacity and so forth, and to co-locate and supply what will be the lowest cost fossil-free hydrogen in the world. So that concept in itself is, I consider, a platform, and how to make the matchmaking and build this on a larger scale to more locations can be really something we should consider. That's just the background. It's not what I wanted to talk about actually, but it's interesting in its own right. But the world of steel, yes, we are a leader, and here's a study from Roland Berger. You can see Ovako in the top left corner with the highest ambitions and the lowest emissions among all steel producers. But the world is divided between scrap-based circular steel and primary producers that are using ore. And I think all knows that the primary production using blast furnaces is a big emitter of carbon dioxide in the world, probably some 3 billion tons over. So the world is moving to more electric arc furnaces, and there are lots of discussions and debates of how to go about it. But let's look on the circular side. Now, steel in itself is a highly circular product. It is quite easy to refine all the impurities away from steel and create a really good product for new use. So we can recycle it in theory infinitely, which is different to many other materials. And here you see the reason. It's because we can actually oxidize other contaminants into slag or gas phase, and then of course recover them and use them. But there is one issue, and that's the copper. The copper content is a trapped element in steel, and it's a growing concern for the industry and for us all, in fact. Now, if we look at scrap availability in the world, you can see that it's going to grow for every year with more and more scrap. And this shows growth up to about 1.3 million tons. That compares to steel production of 1.8 million tons today. So if you stretch this curve another 50 years or so, possibly you have enough scrap actually for all steel production in the world. Possibly, but there is an issue. And that is, to the right, you see the copper contamination that is steadily growing, and it's growing more the more we add post-consumer scrap into the mix. So what this means is that
ayağa kaldırma politikasının bir parçası olarak hepsi aynı zamanda davrandı ve Kılıçdaroğlu'nun politikasını da kabul etti, destekledi. Şimdi onları...
Excuse me, can you mute, please? Thank you.
Okay. So this tells you that there will be a need for primary steel in the future. We all know that. And that's typically then is what is labeled here as green DRI, direct reduced iron. But we also need to build incentives for better recycling, overall recovery, the sorting, the copper contamination. That is sort of our legacy to our children and children's children. How do we contaminate the steel scrap in the world? Now, interestingly, G7 actually gave a task to International Energy Agency. They have proposed a sliding scale standard to help to make steel greener by labeling, which in fact may distort competition and in fact leads to a violation of basic principles of procurement law. This is the curve, and as you can see, there is a carbon emission, fine, that's good, and some classification. But on the x-axis, you have also content of scrap. And you can easily see here that a much greener, much more circular, lower emitting steel will struggle to qualify among, is in comparison with primary steel. So it really goes against, it's counterintuitive. And I can quote here Julian Allwood, Professor of Engineering and the Environment at the University of Cambridge. The IEA's proposal appears to reflect a power imbalance between high and low emitting steelmakers today, would perpetuate high emitting steelmaking and greatly inhibit the achievement of zero emissions by 2050. And that's the reality. This is what we're facing, and this is what now is lobbied to be part of standards. And my final slide, the sliding scale, all the doubts aside, may be superfluous altogether, since in fact, scrap-based steelmakers will also need green DRI. And again, as a society, we need to promote recycling, make all efforts to eliminate losses in that circular loop. And we should measure carbon footprint and percentage of circularity as properties, not as labels. That will give a just competition in the world. And the market forces of supply and demand will ensure truly green steel conversion. And should there be an initial substitution from virgin steel to recycled steel, it is the fastest way to reduce emissions. But over time, this way will also put pressure on the recycling loop and drive a greener steel. So some thoughts from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot from that. Very interesting. So if we can turn now to lubricants, Mattia Adani, who's the president of the Union of European Lubricants Industry.
Yes, I'm trying to share the presentation. Yes, I am, as you said, I'm the president of the European, the Union of European Lubricants Industry. Can you see my document?
Yes,
No.
If you could do full screen.
I don't see it myself though.
Ah, there you go. Perfect. We can see it now very nicely.
I'm an engineer. I'm an owner of a lubricant manufacturer. I'm an SME, but I also represent the industry at the European level. So I represent more than 400 companies with more than 100,000 employees. And the UEIL is an association of associations. So our members are the national association of the industry. What I want to share with you is why lubricants are important for sustainability. I think what is key for us is to tell people that lubricants are small and hidden, but key elements for the efficiency of mechanical systems. So people, when they look at sustainability, they look at our products. So rather than looking at our product, they should rather look at what our product is doing for the system. No? A small increase in the quality of a lubricants can have a substantial impact on energy efficiency. Clearly, if machinery lubricated better, it consumes less energy, and also increase the lifespan of goods and machinery. We are also, we think, key in rebuilding. And when I say rebuilding, because I think one of the big problems that we have that we've lost a culture of care and maintenance of objects. So we live in the world of planned obsolescence. And especially in the advanced economy, sometimes people have a model of take, make, and waste. we should rebuild and reconstruct a culture where people try to use their object for the longest time possible. So basically, my key message there will be, when you think lubricants and sustainability, not to focus only on what the lubricant is made, which would be, oil, petrol, this is what we call the footprint, or on how it's manufactured, what is called the footprint, but on the impact that lubricants can have on the goods and machinery that are used on in terms of energy efficiency and increased lifetime. This is what we call the end print. And also on our role in rebuilding a culture of care and maintenance. What are we working on currently? When I say what is the industry, we are engaged in reuse and recycle. So a large part of the industry is now collecting and re-refining used oils. For industrial oil, now we've reached a technical standard where basically you cannot really tell the difference between what was called virgin oil, so the one that refined directly from petrol, from the one that has been re-refined. So now we have these re-refining schemes and that are run across Europe, still with some subsidies, but very limited subsidies. We are talking about maybe 3 to 5% of the total cost of the goods. So basically, it means that re-refining oil, I think, in the near future might become market viable by themselves because of the advances we've had in the collection processing and in re-refining. And another area where the industry is working on is the use of biogenic carbon. Clearly, if we do not want to add CO2 in the atmosphere, what we should stop doing is pumping out from the ground the CO2 that has been fixed in million years by nature. It means that another way not to increase CO2 is to use only CO2 that has been generated on the surface. If you want, this is a discussion that we have now in Europe about e-fuels. I don't know if you're following the law on electric cars in Europe, and there is a big discussion on e-fuels. So e-fuels is biogenic carbon, if you want. So basically, the industry is developing non-petrol-based lubricants for the widest possible range of applications. So these green oils, in fact, they're based rather than on petrol, they're based on biofuels, if you want. It's the same principle, ester based from biomasses. We are developing, using them whenever possible. In fact, customers are asking us to transition them out from oil into something greener, and they're using. So we are working on removing the technical difficulties, because for certain application, they don't work, but we are working on it. And third point, as I was saying before, we like to promote a culture of maintenance and care. At the end of the day, if you want to save 10% of resources, we should try to tell people that one way is to use their goods 10% longer. So we are implementing an education campaign in primary and secondary schools. We are doing that with we are now discussing a global project with our sister association, which is ILMA, is the American Association of the Lubricant Industry. The idea is to go there and tell people in primary and secondary schools what's the role of lubricants, how important is to take care of the objects, which I think, probably is a very important thing. So possible areas of cooperation for us with UN would be, again, promote and support a global education campaign on maintenance to counter the cultural model of take, make, and waste. Promote collection of used oil also in transition and developing economies. That could be good for them. It's a new raw material that we could buy and purchase, or also transfer technology, so that could be re-refined locally. And promote the production of sustainable biogenic carbon. We know that's trickier because we don't want to compete with food production. So that's basically, and I was given 5 minutes. Clearly, I'm ready for any questions you may have.
You did great. I have two quick questions. For the the biogenic carbon oils, can you recycle those as easily as you can the hydrocarbon-based lubricants?
Yeah, the problem, as was said for the steel industry, the problem is contamination. So as long as there is no culture of separation, at the end of the day, I mean, people in the field, they mix mineral and green oil, no? So the point is how we develop locally a culture of use of the goods in order to make them easier to recycle. But technically, yes, it is recycled.
I see. And then one other follow-up is the collection system in Europe very efficient, or are there ways to improve how waste oil is collected?
In Italy, we collect 40%. It's of industrial oil.
Okay.
So in fact, you can recover more. It is not only, I would say for you, it's also important because it's not only about environment, which is good enough, but also for resiliency, security of supply. I mean, if you can recycle 40% of what you use, I mean, it's a market changer.
So where does the other 60% go?
Normally it's lost. So we don't know. For industrial oil, it's all oil in the kitchenware. So when we say used oil, I mean the one that they use in restaurants to fry. I mean they throw down and dump, I guess. So it's I mean it's an environmental problem.
Yeah, got it. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your presentation. Very interesting and informative. So don't go away. We're going to come back with questions. So we'd like to move to textiles next with Andrea Weiner.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. So let me share also a quick
Sure,
slide.
and just introduce yourself as well. Did he share his screen?
Oh, sorry. Why is not?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying. Give me a second. Okay.
Okay. We got it.
Oh, okay,
if you
perfect.
could full screen, that would be great. Oh, perfect.
Okay, great. So I'm Andrea Weiner. I'm the CEO of Officina 39. We are a chemical company based in Italy, in Biella, the city. Biella became 3 years ago creative city by UNESCO. Mainly what I would like to share today with you is our experience in textile. As you know, textile for sure is one of the most impacting industry for our planet. We know that in something positive happened during the last 10 years, 20 years, mainly in some area of the world, some region, due to the regulation, like Europe for sure, but still a lot of job must be done to improve and reduce the impact. Mainly our story, born in this city in Biella, that has been one of the European most important textile city linked to the wool and textile industry. And as you know, in Europe, we are facing a lot of crisis regarding manufacturing of textile. And as always, crisis also can represent a big motivation and the challenging to change the business model. And nowadays, really, the heritage that this our region gave to us permit to also think different models and working a lot in the recycling operation. And mainly, just I want to share our experience, but then to open a little bit more the discussion. Few years ago, we developed this concept and this product that we are calling Recycrom, where we were thinking what we can do for our industry and what we can use to replace the conventional dyestuffs. Dyestuffs our industry represents one of the most polluting components because really the reaction to produce dyestuffs is really impacting. And during the last years, also a lot of companies tried to brands to replace, for example, conventional dyes with natural dyes coming from the natural, from the flower extraction and so on. Here, what we had always internal hard discussion with our team has been regarding, for example, the natural dyes. It can be a really interesting message to give to the final consumers, but really, if we are thinking to replace food field with flower field to extract colors, I think this is not something really sustainable for the future. That's the reason we were working hard to understand what we can use to replace the conventional dyes. Here, born recycling, that is a technology where we are able nowadays to transform the textile waste coming from post or pre-consumer into a very fine powder. So we are transforming 1-to-1 practically. So from 1 kilo textile waste, we are able to obtain 1 kilo of powder. And then we are using this powder as a pigment to make garment dyeing, so dyeing or printing. So we are replacing the conventional pigment with this textile waste dyestuff, so coming from the textile waste. Here we are able to transform any cellulosic fibers into this very fine powder, and then with this powder we are able practically to dye any natural fiber, so cotton, all cellulosic, as well the wool, silk, the man-made cellulosic fibers like, for example, tencel, viscose, and this type of fibers, polyamide. And we are not able to dyeing polyester at the moment, but for printing, by printing, we are able to print practically any type of fibers. Mainly, so this is a range card, just an idea that can replace, as I say, the conventional dyestuffs, a pigment in particular. So the most convenient comparison is with a pigment, used a lot in our industry. And what is LCA, just to give you a quick idea, this is a comparison between the reactive dyes, that is most used dyestuffs in the textile, that is the orange one. You can see the normalizing impact at 100 for the reactive dyes, and how much less our technology can have impact, how much less impact have our technology compared to the conventional one. In particular, there is one factor that is aquatic eutrophication, where even we are going in negative, so we are giving credit because eutrophication on the water is something really important for the, very impacting, but for the dyestuffs when we are sending to the, even to the treatment plant, the dyes. But mainly, I would like to share with you this this experience, because really I still think that unfortunately textile is still deeply rooted in a linear approach, make, use and dispose. So this is still, we have to say in very frankly way, this is what is still happening in the textile industry. Of course, as I said, we can see during last 10 years a lot improvement. Many brands are working to develop more conscious, less impact production, but still the most of the production worldwide has been made thinking make, use and dispose. So how to change this and to improve this? For sure the consumer are very important, because consumers can influence the brands. But then I think companies, governments, and the organization, so to create also proper collaboration between the stakeholders is very important to create the proper system to grow a real circular economy concept in the textile industry. Here, the place where we are is very important, because it's connecting us to other platforms. One of the most important in our city, in our region, is the Michelangelo Pistoletto Foundation, BEST, Città dell'Arte. We are member of their platform, and of course is something really important for us to be in connection with them, working with them, because they are really push us to think in different way. Imagine that this artwork made by Michelangelo Pistoletto has been done in 1967. So he's put a mountain of scraps of second-hand garments, of waste garments in front of the beauty of one Venus, just to create this opposite concept. And he created this artwork in 1967. So I think working with such organization is very important to have a different approach in our industry. As well, we are cooperating with Fashion for Good, is a platform based in Amsterdam, where also they are working in a similar concept to promote new technology to reduce the impact of our industry. And as well, we are working and one of our projects with other important company like Lansing, Tencel. They are one of the biggest fiber producer in the world. Us and one creative company named Media, we developed during last 2 years this concept, the Circle Book, where Circle Book is really a holistic approach how to create a final garments using high percentage of circular products. Here we included 10 other companies in this project, where each one shared the latest technology in terms of circular economy, and we created this collection, and is becoming a book to inspire the fashion designer, the young fashion designer mainly, to start to think from the day one. So when they have in their minds the idea of any new stuffs, start to think to use the circular economy, the circular products, because other way, most of the time still in our industry, the brands are adding, the fashion designer are adding some components, some ingredients of the sustainable product, circular products at the end or in the middle of the process, but then it's just, as you can understand, a peanuts compared the entire process to produce one garment. So that's the reason it's very important to push our industry to think about to start the fashion designer to work on the sorry, just I want to close. I closed it. Yes, here now. To have this type of approach starting the day one, means when they have any idea in their mind. So this is very, very, very important. But just to conclude, what is very important, we learned during last years working hardly to develop, making something new, innovative, require a lot of investments. And there is something that we learned a lot during last years. Firstly, collaboration is very important to create a real change. So circular approach in the textile business really needs the collaboration of all the stakeholders, from the supply chain to the brands, reaching the consumers, that sure they can push, encourage the entire industry to make a real change. And what, for example, in our case with the textile waste, what we realized during last years, 3-4 years that we are working on this concept, one of the main challenges we are facing is on the supply chain. So here, one of the, you can see at the beginning, when you are launching a new technology, what we are doing, usually, what we did at least, we are trying to search to adapt the best product we can find in the industry, in the markets. In our case, these textile waste are coming usually from companies that are already recycling this type of material, but nowadays mainly of this material is going, for example, for the insulation industry, or in other case for make new fiber, so new yarn. But the collection of this material is completely different compared to our needs. So we had to adapt and try to find the best on the current supply chain offers. The big challenge for me is at the beginning, so to adapt the product, but the next step should be to find a way to create the right synergies with the supply chain, with your suppliers, to really make some change. So to be able to scale up any new technologies, you need to have the proper supply chain. So, and this is something that, of course, UN, all the organization, governmental organization can play a very important roles, because creating the proper guideline, this can create a proper system in the supply chain to recover, to collect, to also split in proper way the textile waste collected. So it's just to share our experience. Thanks a lot again for this invitation.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. I have just one quick question, which is you mentioned the substitute using the new dyes. I think you call it Recycom is the name of the. Can it be washed as many times as the conventional approaches? I'm just kind of curious, because we've talked in a number of sectors here that extended use is very important. So I was interested if these dyes can handle a longer life cycle and many washings, for example.
Yeah, many washes, yes, is comparable as a pigment. That is one of the dyestuffs used in the textile industry. So of course, we can guarantee with this technology quite good fastness. So this is something that is there. Interesting also what we did here with the National Institute of the Textile Research. We worked at the beginning to develop this technology. For example, we started from a black textile waste, and then we transformed the first time, obtaining the first powder. And then we dyeing new stuffs for 7 times, meaning that we recycled. We started from the first one that was a very dark black fabrics. The second one we dyed, we obtained a dark gray, and then till the 7 times, and the last time we obtained a very light gray. So also that means that this type of concept, this type of technology permit us to also reuse much more time and to transform the garments, the fabrics several times. Of course, every time that we are doing this, we are losing the intensity of the colors. This is what is the limit. But this is what we are doing, and so I hope I replied to your question.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. Hang out, because we're going to have some questions. We have one more speaker. That would be Konka Kalvivik. Yes. Are you able to show your presentation?
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for inviting me today as a speaker. My name is Konca Çalkıvik. I'm the Executive Director of Business Council for Sustainable Development Turkey. In short, we say BCSD Turkey. Do you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. In my presentation, firstly, I will introduce BCSD Turkey to you. Then I will talk how we put circular economy in action. BCSD Turkey is a non-profit business association established in 2004 to accelerate the transition to a more sustainable future in Turkey. Our mission is to contribute to policy development in Turkey and to increase the competitiveness of the Turkish businesses in parallel to the sustainable development principles. We have 128 members right now. They come from 33 different sectors, and they create the 20% of Turkish GDP and give employment to 1 million people. World Business Council for Sustainable Development is the head organization, and we are part of the global network of this organization, through which we bring the global expertise to Turkey. UN Sustainable Development Goals create the strategical framework of our work. With our 5 focus areas, we develop programs and create projects in order to reach these 17 goals in Turkey. Sustainable industry and circular economy is one of the focus areas since 2016. Right now, we have 3 projects going on circular economy, 2 business-led, 1 government-led, 2 at national level, 1 at regional level. But today, I will only focus on Turkey Circular Economy Platform, which is a business-led national level platform established in order to create an ecosystem around circular economy. Our journey on circular economy platform has started in 2016. With the financial help of EBRD, we have created Turkey Materials Marketplace. It's an online platform creating economic and environmental value through cross-industry materials reuse. It connects member companies to develop materials exchanges that reduce their costs and promote the efficient use of resources. In 2020, we have created Circular Economy Platform of Turkey to offer different tools to companies on circular economy. And Materials Marketplace became an important component of this platform. The Circular Economy Platform consists of 5 components. There's a digital knowledge hub, which is like a digital library. It's open to everybody. Anybody who wants to learn more about circular economy can go there and check the materials we put there. But there are also technical assistance vouchers, trainings, also materials marketplace and circularity measurement tools. These require membership to the platform, and thanks to the financial support of EBRD, there is no membership fee. The membership is free. We give technical support to the companies who become members because this is technical assistance is one of the most important services we give. We analyze the possibilities of materials that they have in excess and they have as waste. And companies can make use of the technical grants that EBRD has created and assess their circularity potential through feasibilities and R&D research options. Until now, 38 companies benefited from this grant, and in total, 800,000 euros have been given out as technical grant. We also give circular business design trainings in cooperation with Circo company from the Netherlands. Companies using these trainings can assess their existing business models and they can create new business models after these trainings. We also make sectoral analysis and identify the synergy possibilities between different sectors. And we organize industrial symbiosis workshops in order to identify these synergies. Just a few examples from the materials marketplace. Like I said, it's a digital platform. It's an online tool. It's like a shopping tool. But companies put their excess materials or waste on the platform, and companies who would like to buy these materials can go online and get these materials. Right now, there are more than 340 materials from 22 different categories. And 56% of these materials are organic wastes, sludges and filter cakes, paper and cardboards, and plastics. Until now, 24 transactions have been realized by this platform, and 77 tons of materials have been recovered. Almost 4 million euro of value has been created. I would like to give just 2 examples from these transactions. The first one is from Anaco, liquid egg producer company. It is between ANACO and Arkim, production of natural food preservatives company. ANACO's waste was eggshells, actually. They were powderized and used by Arkim as natural food preservative and calcium supplement, which is actually very easy, but it's a very good example for cross-industry reuse of materials. The second example I would like to give is between P&G and Marmara Recycling Company. Non-standard detergents of P&G has been bottled up and used as cars detergent and carpet detergents by Marmara Recycling Company. We also offer measurement tools and evaluations tools called circular transition indicators. It's another online assessment tool developed by WBCSD in cooperation with KPMG and Circular IQ. We encourage our members to use this tool because it's an international tool and it is used in 91 countries by more than 1,500 companies. We bring out sectoral guidelines on metal industry, on textile industry, on fashion industry, for example. Last year, we have also launched another report on the circularity potential of Turkey in 5 sectors. There's another example I would like to give. In order to create a community and to talk more on circular economy in Turkey, we have created a series of inspiring conversations. You can reach these videos on YouTube by scanning this QR code I have put on my slide. This is my last slide. Actually, this is the value that we have created throughout the circular economy platform since 2016. In conclusion, I would like to say that we will continue to expand and develop our services on circular economy. We will also encourage companies for their transition towards circular economy with consultancy, technical and financial assistance. Thank you for listening.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that comprehensive overview. Can you tell us who owns the marketplace that you mentioned? Is it the association?
It is co-owned by the association and EBRD.
And is there any transaction costs associated with that, or is the association pay for the platform's operations?
Actually, EBRD pays for the platform operations because it is financed by EBRD. We are just managing the work on the platform, encourage companies to use it, create a community, give service, etc.
I see. And last question, do you have a marketing budget to share how the platform works with other companies so that they know about it?
It's a small budget because right now it is like there's a yearly cost, but the first establishment cost was high because it's an online tool. You have to write a new program for that. But it's like an online shopping tool. Of course, there are additional marketing budgets, but these are not very high budgets. Since we have a very big organization, we reserve a certain budget for that activities.
Very good, very good. Well, that was actually an excellent example of a marketplace that offers something for the circular economy. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I pride myself in knowing about lots of platforms. And this is the first time I've heard about this particular platform. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. Great. So now we can open up the discussion and get some questions. from the audience. Do you have any questions teed up?
The ones in the agenda, we can go through.
Okay,
So
yeah, we
basically,
can do that first.
just
Sure.
quickly to mention, because we were on mute before, so please feel free to use the raise your hand function on Teams to indicate if you'd like to, speak, comment on, provide feedback, or ask a question.
All right. Okay. So I guess let me go back. We had so many speakers talking about so many different sectors. It was a great opportunity. So let's go back to, let's see. I think maybe some broad questions about our speakers. What do you think is needed to make more platform opportunities in the sectors that you discussed? Maybe we could go back to Serbia and talk about the food waste reduction. It was a very interesting pilot. Interested in what you see as the next step and maybe some opportunities to expand and grow the platform. So,
well, talking about, hello, yes, I heard the question. Yes, thank you. Well, in the area of food in general, there are different things that can be done, but all have to be with food. Food is very sensitive comparing to other products or other sectors because of consumption and because of food safety. So if we want to reduce food waste and use it for consumption more, then we have to align with those food safety measures. What can be done and what is explored currently in Serbia is in the area of donation is to have broader broader list of products that can be donated on one hand, and on the other hand to have some to incentivize companies to donate in terms of that. For instance, for now, companies who donate food, they have to pay VAT, but that is case for Serbia. I don't know how it is in other countries. In other countries, it's not. I think in many countries, it's not. So in Serbia, countries that want to donate, they really have to be passionate to donate or to fulfill their goals. So they pay VAT. If that was not the case, if some taxes were removed or VAT, more companies would be willing to donate and thus reduce food to be wasted. There are other attempts here also, and what can be done is to use the food that is already wasted, that cannot be used, and then use it for some other purposes, as for composting or for fuel. And there are some small attempts, but also over here we have different legislative burdens, and there are some initial areas, initial attempts to use food for those purposes. So I can only speak from our own experience. I don't know what is the legislation set up in other countries, but there should be some things in legislation that should be introduced or changed in order to enhance this whole process. We also have the issue of if something becomes waste, that it can be used as a resource, but it's also not for food only, it's also for other sectors as well. So these are things that have to be tackled in order to enhance this whole process.
Yeah, well, you just walked through actually some really important topics. I think one is, in many cases, platforms grow by expanding their catalog. Right. So the more things they can offer, the more likely they're to get demand, because then there's more variety, right, on their platforms. It's very interesting. And so I guess this is true also for the food's extra, you call it excess supply instead of waste, right? That's a good one.
Yes.
So catalog is important for platforms. You mentioned a hindrance, which is the VAT tax. So removing that in areas. So that's interesting, and thinking systematically across all the different sectors and how does tax policy impact the platform. So that was another one. The other one I heard you mention is cross industry, right? Or cross sector.
Yes.
Like where does one sector have an oversupply and another sector has an undersupply? So platforms can provide that coordination function. So those are three really big elements that I think are probably true for many other sectors as well. So I wonder if any of the other speakers have similar examples. How about in steel and mining? Do you have some examples of similar policy barriers or cross-sector opportunities?
Yes, and I think I was also very pleased to see this model from Turkey. I think what we're perhaps lacking a bit is the flywheel effect and to get it moving and what is the model to really make that happen. But that's exactly what we need. And in our hydrogen project, I think we've learned a lot about following the energy value streams. How do we reuse and make use of energy in all its forms, which requires the kind of mapping that you also, Peter, showed in one of your slides. That mapping and then the matchmaking attached to it. So some kind of match mapping, if you wish, a systematic approach on that. I think it's not just about finding each other, it needs to be architectural approach to it also.
Well, that's why I mentioned the budget. Is there a budget for marketing? Because sometimes people think, oh, if we just create the platform and it's available, people will find it. Well, it turns out in a complicated world in which there's a lot of things going on, you actually have to have a marketing budget that goes behind these. So some of these platforms are going to be fantastic, but they're going to fail unless people know that they exist and that they're available. So platforms need marketing budgets.
That's one point I wanted to make. And the other one is, of course, what Professor Safani talked about, the value capture. That is important. And I think here we have this delicate dilemma between short and long term. And in case in point is the scrap and the copper contamination. I mean, short term, it makes sense to just compact scrap and chop it up and shredding it, and you get the financial model that works. But long term, it's not the right one. So there is a balance here that needs to be struck, and perhaps policy comes into that equation.
I see.
And thirdly, the third point is perhaps also in these matchmaking exercises, we should extra hard try to look at end of waste products. Because there are new technologies now to develop from end of waste, you can reach another level of usage. And maybe the other products have a tendency to find their matches anyways, but why don't we isolate out end of waste products and really put that up there as a special focus?
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. So I wanted to go back to Andrea Wiener from Textile and ask about the big platforms. More and more people buy their clothing on the big platforms. I was interested in if you've investigated, talked to those big platforms. Are they interested in hosting these more innovative policies, or are they exploring circular economy opportunities? So, Andrea, do you have some experience working with the big platforms like Zalando?
Yes, you are. So some big platforms starting to really invest in the circular programs. That's really, really interesting for the industry. You are right. Most of the time there is a lack of marketing, because if we are talking about, for example, platform that there are a lot of platforms that are growing for also sell recycled garments, so the second-hand garments. Some big organizations already are doing that, but without claiming properly. So sometimes I ask sometimes if this is because it's more convenient for this platform to sell the new stuffs, or so this is something that is really interesting also to try to understand and open a very frank discussion about this point. In general, I can see that there is interest is growing, but still to reach properly to the end users, so the consumers, is still the lack is there. So is still not so easy. Most of the time there are a lot of platforms, so consumer is becoming really confused. Or in other cases, there isn't enough marketing to reach. So there are a lot of initiative in this moment in our industry. Maybe what is missing is coordination and proper marketing. I say, I believe a lot on what you said, and is one of the key points to have success in the circular economy. Without involving, so if the demand is not growing properly, it's very difficult to can scale up any innovation like us. In this moment, there are a lot of innovation in the industry, but it's difficult to scale up because again, we are coming back to the market. These the main points.
Yeah. So when I went to buy my ticket to fly to Europe, on the drop down, there was a little box. I could see how much carbon emissions the different airlines I would have if I bought that ticket. I'm wondering for apparel and retail, if maybe kind of a circular sort of score might be interesting, right? Where you could see and the customers could see, hey, how is this contributing to the circular economy? I don't know, have you seen anything like that?
Yeah,
some kind of
there are a lot of scores in our industry. And again, this is, I think, something that should be regulated in different way. So imagine that during some events, during some panels, some of the panelists recently said that he checked and it looks that in the textile industry, there are something like 400 different certifications. So you can imagine this, how much confusion can create. Then 400, maybe 20, 25 are the most important, but there are 400 certifications. So to make easiest for the consumer to understand, I think the future should be to create a ISO, like we have the ISO 9000 for the quality. We should think something similar. So this, for me, the future. The future is not anymore to have one product certified, but the company by itself should follow some standards and and prove according to the standards the scores. This should be something interesting. And the other point for me, for the textile, to really change the approach, as I say, the approach make, use, and dispose, should be also to start to measure the durability of one apparel, of one cloth. This is very important. Durability means that can help to start also a better recycling system. For example, if, as you said, in one labels will be a clear, not made by any certification, but there is because there is a standard. There is this standard is saying, okay, the footprint I can save is this, and these garments, according to some tests, can have a durability of 3 years, wear one time a week. I don't know the standard how can be done, but this is something that can help really the consumer to understand and to make the proper choice and to see, okay, I want to buy this because this can support my idea to protect the planet. And platform can grow. And in and that this is the way when the consumer starting to demand the platform are ready to make the jump, according to me. Missing this part, and there's a lot of balance, politics issue. There are business, so there is so a lot of politics issue are involved in this.
I have a suggestion. You have to make a TikTok video around standards for the apparel industry. Then all the young people will be like, yes, that's the best one, and they'll all do it. Yeah, no, it's, I think standards are interesting. I didn't realize there are 400 different types. That's obviously going to create a lot of confusion for the customers about which one makes sense and which one should I adhere to? I think it's very interesting to think also, should the brands be responsible or should the platform be responsible for the standards? I gave an example earlier today about Zalando trying to set standards for its platforms that the brand should follow. So that's an interesting way because you can then cascade that down to, they have 4,500 brands on their platform. So it can have some influence. You can imagine if Alibaba and Amazon adopted common standards, just two companies set the standard, it would affect thousands and thousands of others. So thinking about going to the platform to set the standards rather than doing it by the brands is interesting. Let me go back to lubricants with Mr. Adani. I also have a question about standards in the lubricant space. Many customers there also are not aware of the amount of recycled oil that goes into their lubricants. Do you think that standards in the lubricant space could be a way to encourage more circularity? Mr. Adani, are you still available? Oops. Okay, we'll come back to him in a minute. How about in the steel case? You mentioned a bit about the debate right now over setting standards. Do consumers, I guess steel is so embedded deeply into products, the end consumer typically doesn't see or, you know, so for in a B2B case, do standards have an influence?
Well, that's what's hoped, but I'm afraid that it's going the wrong way. It will have the wrong influence. I think the key here is to set the standard on how we define and measure carbon footprint. And even if it's well hidden in the supply chain, it's going to be a massive contribution to the overall footprint of that product. So in our case, Ovaco's case, we are 2 tons per ton below global average in emissions. But also if you consider yield losses to final product, I mean, it could be as high as 4 tons per ton to a global average. And I mean, that has an impact. And so that is what we need to communicate.
So, but how does that flow through to the end consumer? So for example, if you're a BMW buyer and you're interested in having a very low carbon impact, and so you want to pick a car that has the lowest, I have no idea how to find out what the carbon footprint of the steel in that vehicle is. There's no way.
That is exactly the key point. And the car producers that we talk to, they want this because they want to add up textile, plastics, and all sorts of metals.
To have the final
carbon footprint of
the vehicle, right?
And percent of circularity. And they all want that, but they are met by this labeling approach. And how can you possibly put the car together with label A, so label B, so label C, so
textiles, you have 400 to choose from. So
it becomes just messy. And I mean, if I go to buy a hamburger in Sweden, I can see the carbon footprint of the burger. I mean, that's what I would expect for a car to be declared with the carbon footprint and the circularity.
I think there is in the automotive sector, I've been 17 years, and all the products that you have to deliver to the OEM, you have to fulfill the IMDS, so it's a declaration of all the materials. So I think it's just one step in that declaration that all suppliers are doing, just put their carbon footprint.
But that's not revealed to the final customer. Maybe the OEM knows that information, but the final customer is not seeing that.
It's just that final step. We need to take that step, and we need to standardize measurements. But you know, let's get started. I think before we are precise, we can at least be transparent.
Now I'm getting interested. So when I want to buy a car, I'm going to ask next time, hey, what's the reuse?
You first asked which was the percentage of a car that is recycled. Now we want to ask the footprint. So I think it's good, the mindset that we are having as users.
Well, I just think that the platforms know, like you said, the OEMs collect a lot of information. The platforms collect a lot of information about the brands, but they're not revealing that to the end customer. So there's a disconnect, and it's not clear exactly why that's the case. Is it, they're afraid to show that number, or there's
a lot of, people want, in purchasing especially, want commoditization. I mean, they want tradable, exchangeable products. So this is, of course, a tricky thing. But I think differentiation is key. We need to differentiate. We need to allow things to be differentiated. That's the only way we can drive consumer behavior. And yeah, now I lost my thought.
If I may ask, if I may add, for example, in the automotive sector, I think cost, that the professor was saying also, cost is the driver here, right? So if you use, right, all these bio recycling, sometimes it's more expensive. And in the automotive sectors, it's it has a huge impact. But at the end,
yes, and that's right. And for us, in our case, now we are presenting to our customers, this is what I thought, the transport cost, right? That's very interesting. But we are giving them three factors: transport cost, transport carbon emissions, and transport lead time. And then, I mean, it's not so easy to combine all those into one measure. This is called, management. You have to manage different disciplines. But being transparent, you provide that on the table. Now it's your choice. Do you prefer time, cost, or carbon emissions? I mean, this is how we should act.
So I can see in the future that this gets into procurement and supply chain, that price and quality were very critical measures. But in the future, more and more, these other metrics are going to be very important for purchasing behaviors.
Properties. That's how we can drive behavior.
Right.
and also the people that are going to be the purchasers, so are millennials. So I think that they want to with one click do this purchasing and to, I think it's another people that it leads that you have a relationship, right, with a. So this is also a point, who is going to be the buyer in the future?
Yeah. So if you are in a hurry.
Have to change things now.
Yeah. Well, a lot of attention was placed on carbon and tracing the carbon footprint, but I think now circularity could be another value that becomes important, and they're interconnected. They're not completely separate. What point was made earlier about food and how? Yeah.
Ranja
Sure.
mentioned that she has to leave at 3. So
Okay.
any questions on the Turkish example?
Yeah, well, I thought the Turkish example was extremely interesting. I guess a question I have there is, do you know of other countries that have as comprehensive an approach as Turkey? Is Turkey unique, or are there other countries that have a similar programs in place?
Very good question. Thank you. Actually, I talked about WBCSD is our head organization, and there is a branch in USA. And materials marketplace has been developed there in USA. So the first example was USA. We were the second example using the same platform. There are also attempts to use the similar platform in other countries like Israel, for example. As far as I know, there are other attempts, other platforms in UK and in Vietnam. So Turkey is not unique, but one of the pioneering countries.
Gotcha. And you said that there's been $4 million worth of value created, which I guess compared to the Turkish economy is still pretty small. What do you see as the next 5 years opportunity to grow the platform, and what are the elements or what is needed to help scale that? We were talking about scale being important. Interested in your thoughts on what constrains growing the platform.
There's another project going on right now in Turkey. It's called the Circular Economy Technical Assistance Project, and it's a 3 years EU funded project. When this project is finished, we will create the circular economy roadmap of Turkey, and it will be parallel to EU circular economy package. When this circular economy guideline or roadmap is out, then our platform will be more substantial to be used by different companies. Like you said, there's a marketing budget needed. We have been working to create a community since 2016. We have reached the first 500 companies very easily. But there are many companies in Turkey which could use this platform. So we are actually in cooperation with the Ministry for Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change. Hopefully, by the help of the legislation, this platform is going to be used by more companies.
I see. And the legislation is an incentive? Is it like we talked earlier about tax being an issue? What is the legislation focused on?
The legislation right now doesn't describe end of waste criteria.
Mm. Got a internet glitch.
Yeah. Problems.
Good.
Legislation.
Okay, we lost you there for a second. Do you mind repeating?
Sure. There's no end of waste legislation yet, but there's an existing secondary raw material and alternative materials usage legislation. The transaction realized until now were based on these two legislations, so there was no problem. But when end of waste criteria is also in the legislation, the work will be much more easier.
I see. Great. Well, thank you so much for your contribution. It was super interesting.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Mattia is back on, and we also have a question from Stephanie.
Ah,
So whatever you'd like to. Stephanie, welcome to the meeting. We see your hand up.
Hi. I'm Stephanie Engelhardt from Germany. I am CTO of a company who is developing zero emission and autonomous boats. I have a statement to the steel discussion, because the car manufacturers are asking for steel with reduced CO2. I don't think they are do it because of sustainability. They do it because of the law for the supply chains. They are very afraid of this law because they don't know what they have to do in the next years with that law. I think there will be some platforms who will help that. And I think the same should be for the circular economy. There should be laws. For example, you have to repair about 40% of your produced products, or you have to recycle 80% of the produced something like that. I think there is not that business case. But if you have a law, and maybe a forced law like a CO2 certificate for circular economy, that would be pushed for the sustainability. So I think the lawyers should, the government should think about that to give them a chance like CO2 certificates. This was my statement. Thank you.
Do you have any response?
Yeah, I can only agree. You know, that's the x-axis of the curve I showed. I mean, but the y-axis, the x-axis with this percentage graph that makes even the worst performing scrap-based product is better than the A class of primary product and should be classified much worse. I mean, that goes against common sense, to be honest. So I think what you're saying is absolutely true. We should be focusing on the actual emissions.
Gotcha. Okay. So thank you so much for your comment. Very, very helpful and interesting. Are there any other comments online?
No comments online, no.
Okay. Oh, please.
Sorry, in the absence of any other comments online, so I would like to ask a question and try to bring in the aspect of potential producer responsibility. We've talked about the role of platforms in perhaps promulgating standards that help consumers make better informed choices. But another potential policy obviously that is widely deployed already in trying to further incentivize the circular economy is the principle of producer responsibility, encouraging producers to design waste out of the system by making them responsible for the waste that is still generated. So my question would be, to what extent can platforms, in particular perhaps the big existing consumer-facing platforms, be involved in this? To what extent can they facilitate the implementation of a producer responsibility principle, legislation to this effect? To what extent maybe should they even be saddled, if you will, with responsibility for the extent to which the products that go through their platforms are recycled or not? Sort of a parallel, if you will, could be the discussion that we have on social media platforms, where there's been a long discussion actually to what extent should the platform operators be responsible for regulating the content. So is there any case for having a parallel to this?
Well, I mean, one of the things that platforms do is set guidelines for who is a seller on their platform. And so if you look at the really big platforms, they have large teams that are called seller centers. And they have teams that go out and promote their platform to attract sellers. And then they have onboarding procedures and a bunch of policies that are needed to sell on the platform. So you can imagine if a platform wanted to promote itself as a circular economy platform, it would set criteria for who could participate, and it would attract and vet companies that adhere to certain circular economy principles and reject the ones that didn't. So then the question becomes, is such a platform viable or not? And we're seeing cases of smaller platforms and startups where that's the case, but we haven't seen yet a platform at scale doing that.
And again, what is the policy application? Is there a policy case for incentivizing these big existing platforms to do something like that? Or would you say it's something that will come as the circular economy and demand side grows?
I think that comes indirectly by legislation, right? So for example, a certain percentage of steel must be recycled or things of that nature. That would create kind of the conditions for the platform to say, yeah, we endorse that, or we'll take that baseline and make it even better. And so we'll do better than the existing legislation, if they perceive there's a demand for that. So, you know, platforms are always weighing between the supply side and the demand side. And so they will attract the suppliers if they see sufficient demand, or if they see sufficient demand, they will scramble to go and find the suppliers to meet that demand. So they're in the middle, right, trying to judge what that market will bear.
Can I add a comment to that?
Sure. I mean, the recycling aspect is fine and noble and all that, but it's still at least 30, 40 years away. So, and that's why I proposed this end of waste focus in materials, perhaps also in CO2 emissions and waste heat and so on. The value streams that just get lost because people have given up more or less. That could be more also, in global context, there may be solutions on how to address these things. And that is more immediate. That's what I mean. And you're putting it on a scrap heap or something, you know, every production hour. So that's
The
something.
driver
perhaps-
doesn't always have to be environmental goals. It could be, for example, concerns over resource scarcity. So, for example, if you believe that we're not going to have sufficient lithium, you can encourage the creation of a platform. See, with production, what you do is you spend a lot of effort collecting the stuff and then processing it, and then you sell it to customers and it gets scattered again. So then how do you recollect that in an efficient manner so you can send it back through the system? So we're very good at collecting it on the raw side, processing it, but the collection on the back end is still.
I agree there.
Yeah.
But there are also value streams that just go to the sites all the time.
Well, and you can also find alternative uses. It doesn't have to go back into the same industry.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yes.
And so that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity for creativity, which is these cross, and we heard some of the speakers mention this, which is the cross-industry perspective. So it's interesting to have an economy-wide platform like Turkey is, because my concern there is do the industry players actually know about it? Because they're used to getting their supply from one place. This platform may exist, but they didn't know that it exists and it's a potential supply source. So you have to retrain the industry as to where that supply is coming from. And they need to have confidence because their systems are set up for raw material. So they're testing, their engineers, everything is focused on raw supply, not on circular supply. So does there need to be some technical capability or some testing to give them the confidence that they can actually use the recycled material and meet their engineering specifications and things of that nature? So there's some really interesting things around just kind of engineering culture and the testing of that. So there's actually a company in Germany that's a platform. In fact, Marina, you invited him to speak, and I can't remember the name of the platform.
Test for Change.
What's it called?
Test for Change is a platform that just look for all the capacities of testing
Materials.
in order to get the certifications. You know that for the CCC, for the UE. So instead of having your own workshops or your own materials, just look which is a free available for companies also. For in the automotive, we have a lot of facilities that sometimes are underused. So in order to maximize all the usage of the resources that we have.
Yeah. And so they have built a database of testing facilities and the schedule, because not all testing facilities have excess capacity. And so they become a broker and a matchmaker for this. And testing is critical because in order to sustain the warranties on the production, you have to have ensured that the right material is being used in the production process. So this is a fabulous platform. It's German, I believe.
Yes, it's German. I'm going to put in the chat.
Yeah, it's a really interesting platform and a great kind of process. And so if you know that, so we often think we need one platform for the solution. In many cases, you actually need to use multiple platforms. One of them could be the testing platform, another could be a logistics platform, another could be the supply platform. So it's really assembling all of the platforms and understanding that you can get your supply from the platform, not just from a traditional supplier. So it becomes part of your supply chain.
Mattia, you've also raised your hand. Would you like to comment as well?
Oh, yes, of course.
Mattia, I think you're muted. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you.
No, I just wanted to comment. Sorry. Sorry. No, I just wanted to comment on the question, but also to give me the question was whether we should regulate standards. I think that's wrong. in the sense that because it creates regulating supply creates bureaucracy. At the end of the day, create difficulties. What really work is if you want creating demand, as you said before, and platform can be very, very useful for that. I sell lubricants personally on my company on in e-commerce, and last week I got a request from the platform saying to asking me to add a lubricants with eco label or eco design because they noticed that people are searching for that.
There you go.
And so this is exactly an example of what you were mentioning. So I think the best way is really to create demand. For example, going back to the culture of maintenance, I think e-commerce platform in general would be very useful to signal into customers, for example, whether a product has a planned obsolescence in there, or if any appliance or good or electric as a maintenance, can be maintained. Are there spare parts? I mean, the suppliers committed to manufacture spare part for 10 years, 20 years. Is there a manual? I mean, we have platform in Europe where you can browse the way how to maintain your goods. They make a business out of it. Why don't we ask the mainstream platforms to include that information since the beginning so the customer know whether the good can be maintained or not? I think that would be really helpful, more than working on supply and increasing bureaucracy or on labeling. Now for chemical products, labels are so complicated that in fact people, they don't even read them. They're full of technical information that basically there's a lot of data, but no real information for consumers. No? So at the end of the day, too much noise leads to the exact opposite result. People, they don't read. So I'd rather simplify that and ask platform to signal the real information to customer in a simple way.
I see. Okay, very good.
We have Alex as well, who's raised his hand. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Alex. I work together with Peter on business ecosystems and platforms, and I'm also part of the network and the Business Ecosystem Alliance. I want to build on what Mattia just said. If you look, for example, to organic food, the way it's immersed is actually, it starts in niches. And if you look at food retailing, it became big as soon as they started blocking the supply and making it visible. The same happens now and I'm not talking platform now, the same happens actually in shopping centers. There are in the Nordic shopping centers that are 100% dedicated to recycling and re-commerce. And so I think it's only a question of time till we see platforms that really focus on that. And then you start seeing the copying mechanisms. We human beings are social copying machines. And if you look at the success of Patagonia, that created a whole copying stream actually in all these other suppliers. So I'm very positive that the network effects on one hand, but also brand-led specialization will drive us consumers in, and then the flywheels will ladder us up.
That's a good point. We haven't even talked about branding, right? We've talked about regulation, but we haven't actually talked about branding, which can be another powerful driver of signaling to customers what that platform is all about. And then that platform needs to develop trust that it can deliver these qualities to the customer. And I think that's true not only for B2C, but also for B2B, right? There's branding in B2B as well. So again, I was probing you about steel in cars, right? The end customer may not know, but the OEMs do. And it can be part of their overall branding process. And they're the ones that have the access to the information. And so the customers can just trust that if I buy from that company, I'm going to get the best quality product, right? Which now includes the circular components. So very interesting. We should think more about branding in this space. Branding circularity. I guess maybe in retail you see it a little bit, but in other industries, not so much.
So you're on.
Mattia is raising his hand again.
Sorry, but I'd like to be in the conversation. No, I think branding is an emerging question. So I have customers, for example, in automatic gates. He wants to substitute all mineral oil with green oil. So why? Because of branding. So he wants to tell people that they're doing so. And Stephanie mentioned the supply chain law that is now in Germany, and there is a directive brewing in Brussels as well. Imagine a platform where if you can buy something there, the platform ensure you that the supply chain law where you have to track, in a sense, certify your product is automatically certified. I mean, it will go a big business, a big win, because at the end of the day, if you want the platform, this the bureaucracy for you, and that's a big thing for many B2B companies,
So is there enough green lubricants to support a dedicated platform?
No. But my point is that now there is a law, the supply chain law in Germany, that basically force, let's say, large corporation, formally 3,000 employees and more, to start tracking their, they say, the sustainability under different aspects of their supply chain. In fact, what it does is that those obligations, they trickle down the chain immediately. So I get letters from companies in Germany asking me to track. So even though the law itself is targeting large corporation, I mean, we as SME, we feel the heat immediately. So now imagine that there is somebody that start up a platform for B2B operators where if you can buy a product there has already been certified and comes with all the information that you need to abide, let's say, these supply chain laws that they're gonna be implemented.
Advantage. I see where you're going. Right. So that trickle down effect has a big impact on the smaller suppliers.
Yeah. So, and that's, I mean, there's a big discussion even in, in Europe, because there is a directive brewing. Sometimes you think regulation, they're done only for large corporations, but that's not true. I mean, they trickle down immediately because large corporations, they're integrated with their supply chains.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, you cannot really separate two in the, say, industrial network. But I think if you want to use a platform, you could use technology to make it easier for everybody. So once you're in the platform certifies you, and you do not have to repeat the same obligation for all the companies. For example, now I'm getting those forms from all big companies, and they're all different. So because each large corporation tries to, because the law is not clear as always, and so they try to implement it in a different way. So we get.
So you're getting different requests from different companies, and they should be standardized.
Yes, or I can put my adhere to a platform. The platform is checking me and standardize the information, and once I'm there, I'm fine. If people buy it from me, they know that I'm certified or I'm compliant. And that could be really helpful, for if you want to use technology to simplify the life of SMEs.
Right. Yeah, no, it makes complete sense, and it would make sense for a platform to gain advantage, right? Platforms compete, right, for the market opportunities. So this is one way that they can gain advantage, is to simplify the buying process. Okay, so I think we have time for maybe one more question. Yeah. And we can maybe do a summarize. Yes, summary. Are there any other questions out there? This is your chance now. We have an amazing group of experts here, so please don't be shy. Even folks in the room. Martin, you have a chance to ask a question.
My questions are sort of quite high level in this context, but I'm thinking a lot about. We've been talking now about policy and regulation, And you were saying just now branding circularity, and to me that means that you have to start understanding and explaining to policymakers and decision makers more broadly what circularity actually is and what kinds of benefit it brings. So that's pretty much where I'm at.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think, yeah.
Alternatively, because the policymakers aren't sure, you could have a company come out and set forth their own definitions, right? And take the lead rather than wait for the regulation to come.
Yeah, and also I think that one area that is a little bit unexplored is we have this concept of multiple benefits. So it's been applied a lot to energy issues, energy efficiency, for example, but it applies also to circular economy. And I think that one such benefit that I've been looking into and that I think is relevant now, especially, is this link between circular economy and the new geopolitical landscape and energy and material security, basically. How can you, through more circular business models and resource flows, ensure that you have a greater amount of control of your value chains? Yeah. So that's like one area where I think some work needs to be done.
Well, you know, I've started to look into this question of why would you ever sell something? If it has value, then maybe you need to switch. And so some companies are beginning to explore what they call product as a service. And it could be for lubricants. Why sell the lubricants? Why not lease them? Because the lubricant has a value, but you don't really need to own it. I don't feel like I need to own the lubricant in my car. I want it for the functionality that it supplies. Why do I need to own it? Right? So I'd be happy to have a service contract with the lubricant provider. And what they do is they keep my machine running well, and then they advise me on what I should be doing. And so I pay them a fee for that service rather than purchasing and then having to deal with getting rid of it, right? They're in a better position to know how to get rid of it. So I think I've seen some instances where companies are moving to service contracts, products as a service. So Michelin Tire, for example, is now leasing tires, right? Instead of, because they take them back then. And I think the lubricant business, I haven't seen them take back so much, but if they can recycle it, and then also for batteries, for lithium, right? Why would you ever sell the lithium?
And the car industry that we were talking about before, they also, of course, are introducing these kinds of business models a lot, leasing and having
Well, you would also think that a company the size of Amazon, they know what they've sold. So for example, if there was a shortage or a higher price of a particular commodity, then all they have to do is send an email to Amazon Prime members and say, hey guys, you know, if you have this in your house, send it back to us. And they could easily make, you know, good money on the fact that they know, and they can have a team that would watch commodity prices or know where there's special, you know, material that's needed in a particular industry. So the platforms actually have a lot of information to close the loop. And the point isn't to close all the loops. What I think is interesting is to think about which commodities have the most value as a recycled. And those are the ones that are going to get closed first. We're not going to get to a full circular economy. It's going to be some of these more high value things. And to know where the demand is and where the supply is. That's going to be very valuable. And the big platforms have a big interest, or they have a lot of information about where material is hanging out.
I guess that then the question is, why should they do it?
As they can make money.
Yeah, but yeah, maybe they can already, some of them, but perhaps I think that, and that alludes to your question, should there be some kind of regulation of producer responsibilities? There are, of course, already such regulations, but I think that you also need to look at the sort of, being an economist, the economic fundamental incentives and tax schemes and all that. So
I'll give you an example. 10 years ago, the wind industry was completely linear. But in the last 4 years, there have been 2 platforms established for parts for wind turbines. right? It's really interesting, but that means that the industry has become more mature and there's more wind turbines that need parts for refurbishing the wind turbines to keep them going. So these marketplaces have popped up to support them. So I think if there's demand, a lot of people understand platform business models now. So they're like, hey, let's use a platform as the solution. And the fact that a country like Turkey now is building one for the entire country, that's pretty interesting too, right?
At the network, we interviewed the CEO of Simple, and they are doing life as a service. So it's like this. Yeah, so everything that you need, everything that you need, right? So it's a furniture, a car, a PC.
Oh, I see.
You know, it's all the services.
Stages.
Yes, it's everything ensures, they ensure that there is circular, and they are doing, you pay a fee and then you use it and then you just return it. So super cool. They were in the Mobile World Congress, the biggest recycler and circularity stand. I think Lucia, that is also in the connection, she was visiting that. And super interesting. The concept, they ensure that all the suppliers also believe and also ensure their values. So they are doing in a startup scale, because they are not Amazon yet, but they're doing this, you know, that everybody has to accomplish the values and to ensure the circularity.
It makes sense. When I had my first child, I was like, we got to have a baby carriage, you know, to push them around. And after they're grown up, you don't even care about that, you know, you're going to get rid of it. So you just need it for like, what, 2 years or 3 years, and then it can be moved. And so they know where the next parent is. I don't know where the next parent is. So off it goes. That's fantastic. Super. Okay. So
I'd also like to say one final remark, I think. Alex, you've raised your hand.
Alex?
Yeah, just to build on the wind turbine thing, Bernd Wiedmann is the orchestrator, if you want. What is really cool there, because I was investigating a wind turbine to put on the mountains, which is a new legislative opening that we might be getting. And so I was asking him to help me around there. And what he said, there is a secondary market for these used turbines, and if they're well maintained, they have a rest of life of around 10 years. So when you do the measurements of wind in your area, starting with a used one is very low risk profile before you then invest into a fresh set. So I think also to facilitate experimentation and broadening the footprint, if you want, of renewable energies and other more risky endeavors, platforms are a wonderful way to create that supply, provide the guarantee, the experts that can service it, and then you can beef up once you have real life data and understand how much they produce, how hard they are to maintain, what the acceptance is of the people that live in the area, et cetera, et cetera. So I think platform is more than just interaction and matching.
Interesting case. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this session. Great set of speakers and bringing huge diversity of perspectives, but some very common themes, right? Which we have the importance of standards and how they impact the creation of platforms. This ability to create supply and that supply being useful in a completely different industry. So this cross industry and platforms are fantastic for that. I think that that is totally under investigated and hugely potential opportunity. Then we also talked about some of the policy promotion activities. Obviously, like the IBRD was supporting the creation of the platform in Turkey. So government support as a way to facilitate, but then also some of the barriers that governments create by inefficient or inappropriate tax rules that impact the ability to create platforms. The expertise, right, that is interesting. And then we talked briefly about branding for platforms and then also marketing, right? Just because you have a platform doesn't mean everybody knows to use it. So there's, I think what we end up with is platforms have huge potential, but there's a bunch of different issues that can affect the both creation, the growth, and the scaling of the platform. So thinking about them holistically is quite central to their success. But obviously, lots of interesting opportunities to deploy platforms that are not currently being deployed. So huge opportunity, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we were thinking about, let me say a few things here then, just so what we did today is homing in on an aspect of transformative innovation that has to do with different business models. We started off saying there is a point in linking these together. That goes hand in hand with what we actually want to do with ETIN. We want to have people also coming from different perspectives and linking your perspectives into a greater and grander knowledge pool, if you will. I think we had, like you said, I mean, this is a fantastic scoping effort. This is the first time we believe that someone did it on platforms. It is the first, well, not the first time we do it, but yes, this is the way we want things to evolve over the next couple of, who knows, months, years, as long as we're going here. But what we're going to do now is actually to have a little bit of sounding out with respect from well, picking up on what Peter just made as a summary. How do we pursue this? How do we proceed? We are starting our activities today. ETIN is about, on the one hand, going from the kind of the simple, more regular talking, which is not as simple as it is, or as people imagine, but it's getting people to talk and to get some insights on topics, new insights. We got several good insights, but we actually want to go from that at one end of the spectrum via start talking and consulting one another how to do things, to collaborating and to even exploring ways forward, ways